We're looking at architecture, but I'm just going to show you a few artists. We're not going to do much analysis, but just want to show you a couple of different things. These guys are both vorticists. It was a British movement from 1914. And without knowing anything about it, it was connected to Cubism and Futurism. You'll understand why if you look at those movements and look at this a bit closer. But the style of these is angular, it's hard-edged. If I said it's black or white, in these ones there's a mid-tone. You can see an extra tone. It's kind of dynamic. There's angles, little small bits, larger bits. So there's a change of pace going on in these. Now we're going to look at something quite different. We're going to look at the work of an architect. These are the models of the architect Lebus Woods. And these are some of his drawings. Again, angular, hard-edged. And what the exteriors and the interior is. This doesn't look like a functional building. This looks like it's kind of been broken up and it's falling apart. If I said it's a bit like the toast rack, it's kind of like had an earthquake. Now we're going to look at somebody else, Matta Clark. So we've got some models, we've got some collage, images joined together in unusual ways. And very interestingly, these buildings have been cut up where you can see from the inside outside where this bore has been taken out of the building, and you can see the external space and internal space and edges as walls have been cut through. Here I have taken some photographs around the art department. I've made them black and white. I've used a phone app. I haven't used Photoshop or anything fancy. Roof tiles in the pottery, a light part of the window, an underside of shelves. I think this is actually upside down. The chairs on the table. We've got part of the stairs and the railings. This is a light fitting in the pottery. So we're going to draw from these photographs. Now I'm going to give you a grid to do this in the classroom, but I'm going to demonstrate really quickly something that might help you if you're asked to draw a grid again. I'm just going to draw some mark points on here. I'm not going to measure it as such. I'm just going to mark up some points. I'm using the ruler as a parallel line. So I've got it right at the edge of the piece of paper and I'm drawing a line. So I don't need a protractor, I don't need to measure anything. I'm just going to do the same on this margin and make sure it's parallel. Now I'm going to put the markers onto here. This is just a very quick way to draw a grid. I'll turn a piece of paper around for ease. Remember, it was 2 boxes high and 3 across. Because they were squares, I don't need to measure off there again. So you see I've got the markers all down, so I can now really quickly connect the lines and draw the grid. So the pen I put on there, first of all, was only to save me doing measurements. I put markers on there. You'll know if I've ever used a ruler, if you ever look at one, because there's often little marks on it to speed up the process. Now you could take a rubber and you could take off the extended lines, these lines where I've just drawn across, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm not going to bother. So quite quickly I was able to construct the grid. So in effect what I'm going to do now is start a grid drawing, but I'm only going to draw a single grid. Now one like this is quite complex, so I'm going to start with something maybe a bit simpler. This one, there's less lines into it, and I'm not going for an easy option, I'm just going to demonstrate something that will get you going. I've marked on here a series of points in red, which will just help you see what I'm talking about. If I look at this line here on the y-axis, if I said about that point's halfway, this is about, I don't know, should we say 7 or 8 millimeters up from there. Now, I'm going to put this point in. You could take a measurement. See what I'm doing? I'm using the tip of the pencil on the point. I'm using my finger here on the line, and I could take a measurement. Now, this line, if I look at the angle, this is the key thing. Now, you could try and plot a point here by measuring how far it is down here and how far across it is, which I could easily do. But you could also look at the angle. So if I put my pencil on it, you can see it's at a quite shallow angle like that. And this one, it's not coming in flat, it's going up slightly. So that is roughly that shape. Now this line that comes under the shelf comes up here, it disappears into a shadow, but we know that line would project and continue to that point. So I could work out where this point is. I can do that. I could use a strip of card or paper, or I could take a measurement. See how I'm doing it again? So that's the point there. I need to work out where this is. If we look at this as a box, and that's about halfway, it's coming down here. So I can connect that line to that line. And you see how I'm going in constructing. At this point, I'm going to just go in and draw some fairly parallel lines, which will represent these lines on here. Now remember, this is an underdrawing, so I'm going fairly light. I'm going to work out now where this line is here. So I could look on the edge there. I could take the measurement, and it's running, is it running parallel with that one? It's running roughly parallel with that one, so it's coming down something like this. I'm going to work out where that bottom point of it is there, because it's further across than you might think. So it's there. There's a little dot there, that's where a screw we're going to secure this support under a shelf. Now that piece there, I think, is the edge of that shelf. If I continue that line, see how it connects there. This line is not running parallel with that one. Look, it's kind of moving away from it, creating a shape that's a little bit like the scalene triangle without a point. And then on that very corner, there's a little bit of detail there. Now I'm going to go in and add a little bit more of this detail. I'll come back to you in a minute. So I've finished constructing the drawing, and now I've got a couple of different pencils, slightly softer pencils. The pencil I was using before was from a museum shop, Manchester Museum. You can see that and little animals on it. That will be a HB pencil, remember. So I've now got a B and a 2B. I would quite happily do this with a B, but we'll show you with the 2B. Now I'm going to start applying some dark tone. I'm not going to just fill in line, I'm going to fill in areas of tone. Now I could work very neatly to the boundary, or I could go over the edge. It doesn't really matter too much to me. But if I look here, the line, I know that underside of the shelf where it meets the wall, or there's a gap where this railing is, it's quite dark. So I can see roughly the top of that line there, but it's got a lot of shadow on it. But the moment I'm doing the darkest bit, and it creates like a triangle of really dark tone. See how hard I'm pressing to get that really dark tone into there. Now we're thinking about those artists. Remember that I showed you before about positive and negative areas. Remember there was areas where, was it interior or exterior, where things were cut away, where you had small marks and solid fill areas. In the vorticist work, there's like different pace of marks. I'm now putting this line in here. It's slightly wider than it really should be. I'm quite happy with that. It's quite a crisp edge to it. So at the moment I'm just shading that in. I've got a bigger gap than I should really have there, but I don't mind too much. I can just put a little bit of shadow into there. You might say, but it's angular, I need to draw with a ruler. I don't think you do, it's quite small. It's kind of got a lightish edge. It'll be slightly off, we're not worrying too much about it, we're just trying out some drawing techniques and working with tone. I want that line to be a bit firmer, so I'm going to go back at it. I've turned my pencil around there, do you see how it suddenly became a little bit sharper? Now, I'm not bothered that this is the underside of a shelf. I am exploring, drawing in quite an abstract way. I've just gone over the line there. I do have a rubber to hand, but to be honest, I probably don't really need to address that too much. And see there's a shadowy area here, so I'm going at quite an angular kind of mark making here. You might say it's got a little texture. It does. It is the wall in the pottery with a bit of texture on it. So I could suggest a little bit of texture into there. See, I'm doing it with little hatching marks. Now these things are quite rounded at either end. I've spaced them out little drawn marks. And I think these are a bit like the vorticist. I'm just going to pull out the pictures I showed you earlier on. See those small marks and those big areas? Kind of sense that you can't tell if this is a space, if you're looking through something, if it was an architectural space, or if it's just an abstract image. So if we come back to here, you can see that there is an association or a visual similarity. I'm going to do a bit more work on the underside of the shelf. Now, if I hadn't taken the photograph, I might not know what this was. Just put a little bit of shading in over here because it's darker on that side of this line. And I'll come back to you in a minute when I've done a little bit more. So I've added a little bit more to the drawing, but I'm still going to add a bit more tone. Now into this side of this shelf support, you can see a bit of light hitting the ridge. So I'm going to use a ruler, but I could equally use a piece of paper to do this. I want to just work so it's parallel with the line. I'm going to cover the line I want it to be parallel with. Did you see how I'm using the ruler? Not to draw a line, but to act as a barrier. If you saw any of my videos from last year when we were doing the food project, you'll see I sometimes use my fingernail as a barrier so I don't go over a line. But in this case, I'm using this because I want a very, very clean, sharp edge. I'm not using it to draw a line, I'm using it to create a line. So I've created quite a sharp edge. If I pull that back into shot, you can see that it's quite dark here and it gets lighter, so I might add some tone into this section as well. Now it is getting a little bit smudged because at times I have put my hand over it, so notice I've just turned the image around. See what I naturally did then? I went to use my finger nail to generate that line. But remember, I can use a ruler. If you put it too close, you'll get a little gap like a force field. So if you pull it back from the line just a touch, just make it slightly sharper line than using my fingernail, which wasn't a very clean line. Now I could use a rubber, not necessarily to do much correction. See how I'm using the edge of the rubber? I have a long straight rubber. It doesn't work necessarily. We've got a little rounded rubber, but I've done a little bit of work into there. Turn it back the way around where you've been able to view it. And you can see that I've constructed a drawing that's not dissimilar. But what I'm looking for is something that's abstract. It doesn't necessarily tell you it is the underside of a shelf. I'm thinking there's a bit more shadow into that line. So it's about learning about drawing, trying to construct a fairly accurate shape, and then seeing where you go. Now if we go on to another box, I don't have to work in the same box, I can move things around. So if I go into the box here, got all my pencils in my way, I'm going to work again the same. So I'm going to make a measured point. There's a long line comes all the way across this box, so it makes it quite easy. I just need to connect those two lines. Now the window is running parallel, the gap's about there. I'm going to look for that point, it's about here. The angle's constructing up there. Wonder where that point is. I'm going to take a measurement. So I'm using a series of different techniques here. So that's that line of the frame there. I'm looking where this joins here. It's running up there. I'm going to draw this line in here. Now I'm going to look at some negative space. I'm going to look at that triangle. It's like an isosceles. It's got a slightly wider base. It's not quite equilateral. Yep, it's slightly wider at the bottom. So I'm happy with that. That's roughly constructed. I'm coming just under there, running roughly parallel with that line. So you see how again I'm constructing, following the principles of what I can see. That looks like it's going, it's not at the same angle now as the window. Look, it's going away. So at this point, if I draw a line that came up here, that point is slightly higher. Now where's it meet the edge? It meets the edge about there. You begin to see how I am constructing. Where does that meet the edge? About there. And again getting an underdrawing quite lightly but fairly accurately. I'm going to take a measurement off this one this time. That comes to about there. That comes to about there. Now you might not get it right first time. That point is already plotted there. That's just slightly higher than halfway. But look at that square now. It's not a square, is it? It's because it's distorted, and see if it looks roughly accurate. It seems okay. Now this is floating around in the midst of it. So as long as I draw something that's using the edges, I'm constructing it fairly accurately. Now I've drawn that all with the slightly softer pencil, but you can see the construction. The next stage, I'm going to start working with dark tones, not drawing heavy lines, but just start working in tonal sections. See on the window frame, it's darker at this end than it is at that end, so I'm pressing slightly harder here. It's dark at the bottom there, I can see that recess. My pencil point needs to be sharpened, so I could either work with my slightly harder pencil again, or I could sharpen the pencil. So you begin to see this drawing taking shape. This is about practicing and learning drawing techniques.